This segment has been sponsored by Pro Bikes Caribe. Pro Bikes Caribe, get yours today. Before we get into today's interview, hear a little bit about the book from the author themselves.
Hi there, my name is Selena Prudent, author of Stone Point Camp Adventures, a collection of short stories. Take a journey as 5 teenagers unravel the myths, legends that have haunted Stone Point Camp for generations. Follow them through each twist, unexpected turn that puts their friendship to test. Stone Point Camp Adventures is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle, as well as in select local bookstores or directly from myself. Visit my Facebook or Instagram pages and click on my link tree for more details.
Greetings, listenership. Welcome to TLC, Tropical Literature Creators, the podcast where we interview authors of Caribbean heritage about themselves and about their literary works. Some of them you've heard of, and some of them you'll be hearing about soon enough. Today we have with us the sensational Selena Prudent. Selena, welcome to Tropical Literature Creators.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me.
Well, thank you very much for being interviewed, Ms. Prudent. There's a scenario that I usually pose to the persons who I interview, and the scenario is this. Imagine we encounter each other at the airport for the very first time. I'm coming to Trinidad and Tobago, and you've been here longer than I have. What would you recommend that I try as I'm coming to Trinidad and Tobago? What food or what place would you recommend to me?
Well, as someone who lived outside of Trinidad for a little bit, I will have to say that the one thing I missed was the Chinese food here. It's pretty good. Chasu Kai Fan was a childhood favorite growing up, and I did not encounter the flavors elsewhere. So I definitely would recommend hitting some Chinese places.
Ah, okay. The Chinese food is different in Trinidad and Tobago.
And then, I mean, I know some people say it may be a little blasphemous to say this, but garlic sauce on Chinese food, it really is good.
You know what? It's recommended by Selena listeners. Give it a try. You know, maybe they'll have the same opinion. All right, Miss Prudence. I, being one of the authors who are being featured on Tropical Literature Creators at this time, you would have been the writer of two books that I'm aware of. The first is a writer's journal where your path from writer to author. And the second one that I'm aware of is Stone Point Camp Adventures, a collection of short stories inspired by true events. Can you give us a little details about these books? Not too much, because we know we want persons to go out and get a copy of the books, but enough, to whet the listener's appetite.
Well, the first book actually I published was Stone Point Camp Adventures, and that was based on my childhood. I grew up in one of the oil field camps, and there were many myths that came down from generations. And, I had my group of friends, and we did go and investigate all these little haunted ghost stories and these haunted houses and these abandoned lots. And so a lot of it is based off of that and, sprinkled with a little bit of, creativity to give it an extra pop-up adventure. It has the feel, most people who have read it have told me they get the feel of the famous five kind of vibe.
Mm.
Nancy Drew mixed a little bit of Scooby-Doo.
Mhm.
So it's that kind of old, nostalgic, before social media and cameras childhood, where you came home and the lights came on, and we roamed as teenagers, eating fruits off the trees. So it's that kind of back in times feel.
Yeah, you took me back there, when you mentioned Famous Five and Nancy Drew. Yeah,
Mm.
you took me back there.
Yes, I was a Nancy Drew-aholic. I lived for the weekends to just dive into a book and read.
I think the male version to Nancy Drew was the Hardy Boys, I think.
Yes. Yep. I
Yeah.
still have copies of that I bought for my sons, I still have those books.
And your other book, the book about the authors?
The other book, I actually did it because I have another book that I actually wrote before Stone
Oh.
Point Camp Adventures. I was given the advice to kind of put that book down and write another book, which I did.
Mm-hmm.
So in editing that other book, I felt there was something missing, a way to plot my book. And I thought, okay, let me develop something that I wasn't really seeing on the market. So it is, after having published my first book, I use this as a guide to help other people, the stumbling blocks that I encountered. I kind of wanted to map it out because every step was something new that I discovered. So this helps you to kind of visualize. There's a little vision board there that you can stick some things on, how you want your cover to look. There are character plotting pages. There are chapter developmental pages. So and there's also some quotes and some little tips and guidelines that I encountered as a first-time publisher, how to publish your book.
Ah, uh, your books, are they, both of them, are they self-published books or did you go through a traditional publisher to get them done?
They are both self-published.
Oh, so this book that you would have written, it would have been about your experiences, things that you would have learned, who you would have learned them from, whether the process was frustrating or whether it was easy, those items of information.
Yes, the little tips, I didn't want to sway anybody either way. It
Mm-hmm.
was, do the research. These are the things to look for.
Mm-hmm.
Weigh what works for you. There are pitfalls in either way, whether you go traditional, whether you go self-publishing, there are pros and cons to each, and investigate both.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Let the facts guide you.
Yes,
Okay, because I guess everyone's situation is different. So what may work for one person may not necessarily work for the other.
yes. It also is aligned with what your objective is for the book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, whether it is like this book was for me as someone who wanted to be an author for almost 4 decades. This book was for me conquering a little bit of imposter syndrome and to finally just put it on paper. And I have been very, very touched by the reception that the book has received,
Um,
the reviews, the support. It's more than I even imagined. I did this for me, and I'm so happy to see so many people are enjoying it.
well, that is encouraging to hear because that's something I usually inquire about, the reception of the book. And to hear you say that, it sounds like maybe another sequel in there somewhere.
There, I don't know. I mean, there could be, and somebody did hint to it. There is the Marissa in the book is actually a friend of mine, and we were speaking about it. Like, there could be a sequel in there. It's in the back of my mind.
Mm,
And that's also something I included at the back of the writer's journal. Your sequel ideas. How can you develop the story further? But next on the processing line is another book that is more in the adult genre about women who are coming out of toxic relationships and rebuilding themselves and finding themselves and the path along that. So it is a storyline that is very dear to me and I'm anxious to get it out there. So it's been written for a couple of years. I'm in the process of editing it and I'm hoping by the middle of this year to have it out at bookshelves.
No, so I guess we have a lot to look out for in 2024. Another book already.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So you've done a workbook slash journal, and then you've also done a mystery with Stone Point. And
Yes.
another journal that you're looking for, that you're writing, that you intend on pushing out in 2024 is more self-help along those lines.
Yes, in a story atmosphere, not necessarily self-help, but self-introspection.
Okay. Switching from like one genre to the next, was that a challenge for you, or is it something that came naturally?
Somebody told me a long time ago, write what you know. And that's basically what it's been, writing what I know. It wasn't necessarily sticking to genre. I also have a poetry book that I've been developing, and poetry has been the first form of literary writing that I ever did as a child. And, I intend to push it out maybe next year. But so the genre is I write what I know.
Okay, and it makes sense.
Yes, what's genuine and authentic to me is what I put out.
Are you a full-time writer? Or is this something
Yeah,
you do? Oh, you're a
yeah.
full-time
Yes, full-time writer. I have a blog as well under thelimetree.com. Which is more in the blog format, addressing certain topics. I am an autoimmune advocate as well, so it does address some of those topics as well.
writer?
And yeah, it just talks about life, and some of it touches on things in Trinidad and Tobago, and but mostly about the journey, self-discovery, the path to healing, all those things that I think women especially would relate to.
Yeah, I think you're something of a unicorn, ma'am, and the reason I say this is because a number of the authors who I talk to they're part-time writers. You know, they have a quoty fingers 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 as they call it. And some of them would like to write, full time. But here it is you are, living the dream. Uh,
Yes, I am fortunate to be able to do that.
Can you tell us a little bit about your process if that's the case? Do you, for example, even though you're a full-time writer, do you treat your writing like it's like a 9 to 5 or something? You get up, you start writing at 8, you take lunch at 12, then you write from 1 up until 5. What's your process?
I have found you cannot schedule creativity. And I'm so glad you asked about the process because finding my process was the hardest aspect of writing for me. I tried writing at home and it wasn't working. I tried writing while I waited for my son at school pickup and it wasn't working. There were so many different ways that I tried, and somebody said, go try a coffee shop. And I'm like, a coffee shop that's so public. I don't know if I can do that. How can I write with all these distractions? But I have to say, I wouldn't call any names, but coffee shops were my go-to place. The white noise of, I guess, the blenders and the hum of people, it just gave me the space to just create. I would sit down, zone in. And so it is scheduled around, I am a mother as well, so it is scheduled around my children's schedule. And creativity sometimes, I think for most creatives, comes in the middle of the night. It comes from the most random places. It could be watching a movie and somebody says one line and that spurs a chapter. I cannot say that I can schedule creativity. It has not worked for me.
Mm. So is it that you walk around with like a little notebook and you take notes as you go along, or where the creativity hits you, you just start to write in this book? Is that how it works?
Well, I have a notepad, a virtual electronic notepad as such, as an app
Mhm.
that is synced to the cloud. So make sure I don't lose it should anything ever happen.
Mhm.
And yeah, that has been my place to just jot things down for the last, I think, decade. So a lot of this book that I'm about to publish has notes um, from 10 years ago that I'm bringing in. So it is, and that's also what made it necessary for me to have a journal,
Mhm.
because I did not write in the beginning to end format as one would normally write. I actually wrote the ending of the book first and then came back. So
Oh.
I knew where I wanted it to go. So I needed the journal to kind of organize my thoughts and organize my notes. And I figured if I was doing this in this very unconventional way, there was somebody else that needed this assistance.
Okay. And that's an interesting approach to book writing. You don't hear persons talking about starting with the end first and working their way back to the beginning.
It's been that way since I was in high school. Even for CXC, when I was writing, compositions, I always knew the ending first. I It's just very odd, I guess. But yeah, I think the ending is the best part of a book.
Speaking of comprehension and secondary schools, were you always a good writer, or is it a skill that you developed over time?
I would like to think I was always a good writer. Um, I was always very long-winded, and I remember in secondary school, my teacher telling me, save this for when you want to write your books, but CXC requires you to stay within this word limit. But, write your books when you're done, so that always gave me the know-how that I knew I needed to write books. But since I was 7, I remember wanting to write books, and I always had journals, and I was always writing. It's been part of my journey throughout my entire life. I don't remember a time not writing.
Uh, as you would have been the author of 2 and going to be 3 books right now, do you find yourself having like additional engagements? And by that I mean persons would see you as an authority in particular fields, as being a person who's a writer full time, a person who would have written one or more than one book. Would you have been invited to be a speaker at certain engagements? Would you have been invited to participate in certain workshops because of your experience? Has that been the case?
I don't see myself as an expert. I think I'm still such a baby in this journey. Though journalism is part of my background, I did work in the newspaper in my early 20s as a sub-editor and a writer. Um, I still feel like this is a very, very, I've now cracked the book open on writing. So I do not feel I'm in any position to be an authority figure. What most people have questioned me on is that I chose to launch my book using a movie trailer. And I think that as I did not think that that was something new. I always knew that's how I needed to introduce my book, because when I write, it's a movie in my head, and I needed to add visual to the book for people to understand what I was painting. And so I think most people have come to me like, why did you go that route? And how did I do it? And so that has been more of the questions I've gotten.
No, that sounds like a very creative way of marketing your book.
Yes, I think in this day and age of TikTok and YouTube, we are all visual people now. We like short clips. And I think if you can introduce your book in a 30-second clip, it will have more impact than, putting out a book cover with a synopsis.
No, I like that. I like the brevity of that. It sounds like there's another segment that Tropical Literature Creative has called Caribbean Book of the Day. And in it, the author is expected to do like an elevator pitch of their book so that persons can just be privy as to what the contents of the book are. And I like that. It sounds very similar to what it is that you're talking about there.
Yes, it is a nice pivot from the traditional way that we would have grown up seeing books being introduced.
Hmm. But aside from the trailer, what other creative ways would you have had to employ to get the word out about your book?
Social media. It has been primarily social media has been my marketing go-to. I haven't leaned heavily on TikTok, but mostly Facebook, Instagram, um, just putting it out there. I've done a few talk shows, both in Barbados and Tobago, and those have increased engagement, as well as doing some ads as well on Facebook. Those have also shown that they boost sales.
Ah, no, that's creative.
You have to be in this in this world now. Marketing is, I would say, the biggest aspect of being a creative in this day and age. You can have the best book, but if you don't market it, nobody's going to know about it. And if you don't spend a lot of time on marketing, your book is just going to be the best paperweight you have, you know? So you have to really market your book, get it out there, get it in front of people. It's hard. As someone who did not grow up with social media, it is really hard putting yourself out there. And I think most creatives are introverted as well. So you kind of have to get over that and put yourself out there.
I mean, here you are giving advice. In addition to writing your book, you've also had to develop marketing skills, and from the sounds of things, you had to become pretty competent with navigating social media as well to promote your book, to promote your tool or your offerings, if could use that term for it.
Yes, yes, it has been a journey of trial and error. And I'm still in it, still working it, still, you still push ahead.
In terms of the covers for your books, for example, the mystery book that you would have done, what was the inspiration for that?
That was actually a picture of a place that existed in the camp where I grew up.
Ah,
So it's throughout the book, there are actual pictures of the camp. So they're real pictures. In the back, there are some have been stylized to kind of fit in with the nostalgic theme of the book. But at the back, there are some real pictures to help the reader visualize a little bit better what the scenario was for these books and stories.
yeah. They're very creative.
Thank you.
I just have two more questions. One of them, it stems from something you had mentioned before. You had mentioned that you take notes on a notebook, an electronic one, and it syncs to the cloud. What are your thoughts on AI being used to assist authors in their writing process? And there's an intake of air, when
Yes,
let me
as
sit.
old as I am,
Hmm.
I think AI takes a sampling, from what I understand, AI takes samplings from all over. And at some point, I think using a book generated 100% by AI is not being a writer. I think for me, I would say there was a little scenario coming to the end of the book that I did not know where to go with it. And I did plug in the paragraph into AI and saw what it spit out. I didn't quite like it, but there was one line that I went, oh, right, okay, yes, that helps me. And I was able to then take that line and expand where I was going. But I don't think for me that if my work is purely about being a writer and being a creative, I don't think that AI is a route. If your aim is to sell books and just, have your name on a book cover and just to say I'm a published author, then yes, AI might be your best friend. It has its place. I just don't think to write a book 100% is that place.
Okay, well said, ma'am. Well said. In terms of your books, the ones that are out and the one that will be coming out soon, where can we get copies if it is that we want to?
Right now, Stone Point Camp Adventures is available at a paper-based bookstore, and that's in Trinidad and Tobago. It's in Sure Things Cafe. It will be available at another bookstore soon. And it's also available on Amazon and also directly from me. There is, if you go on any of my Instagram, social media platforms, there is a link tree that takes you to an order form and it's mailed directly to you. The workbook is either available on Amazon or directly from me at this point in time. It should be in a bookstore pretty soon. The Kindle version for the Stone Point Camp Adventures is also recently been released, I think in the last couple of weeks. So for those who prefer to have the Kindle version, there is that availability now.
Okay, I like that. Because I know that there are some persons who believe that if it is that you can't flip the pages, than it is into a book.
I wouldn't go that far, but I am someone who needs to flip the pages, and which is why I held out for a little bit. And I released this book October 13th last year, and I held out for a little bit and said, no, I want people to have that experience of smelling the book and having the book. And then for those who really just want the Kindle version, it's now there for them.
Okay, okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Selena Prudent. Selena, thank you very much for agreeing to be hosted by Tropical Literature Creators at this time.
Thank you so much for your time and for having me.
Okay, the pleasure was all ours.
Okay.
You've been listening to TLC, Tropical Literature Creators. If you've heard something of interest or something you like, reach out to us. Reach out to our authors. Follow us on social media. We look forward to hearing from you.